It was an early morning at the local high school. Allison was standing by her locker with her best friend Courtney. Courtney and Allison have been best friends since the fifth grade. They do always things together, like helping each other with homeworks and even talks about gossip and even talk about fashion and other type of their favorite movies. But this type of things were something that was different. Allison, she was a lesbian, and the only one who knew about this secret was in fact Courtney. She was told about this after they both started high school. But Courtney, as she has been her best friend, hasn't even revealed the secret to anyone. And the other person who knew about the secret was in fact Allison's older brother Ben, who was about at college at the time. Even though her parents was not even aware that she has been a lesbian, she was not even sure if she would tell her family about this or her parents because she wasn't even knowing if they would support her or not. But this particular day, things will change her life from the first start. Because this day, when Allison was standing by her locker with Courtney, Allison noticed there was this strange new girl standing by another locker, maybe a few rows away from hers. Even though when Allison pointed and asked if she had seen this girl before, and if she knew who she is. And apparently from what Courtney had been told, or at least found out, that this girl by the name Olivia, her family had recently moved to this state, or this particular town, because back in her old school, she was bullied a lot. And she couldn't even stand it anymore, so her parents decided to take her out from the school and move her out of state where she could really have a restart. Even though that seemed to be working, but there were one problem. This school had even another problem that many students were completely aware of. And that was in fact this school had a group of girls, at least three girls, led by by one the name Madison. Madison was the same age as Allison and Courtney. They used to be in the same school together, but then they both started high school together. Madison had been targeted at the students by bullying them, by calling them stupid names, by calling them ugly. They're too stupid. They never find any particular partner in the future. You can just try to. They were never been any good in life. They should just drop out of high school. There were even one occasion when one student, a boy, was actually targeted by Madison and her two friends, calling him stupid. He was never able to find a girlfriend or maybe a wife in the future. And he was so targeted by bullying that he actually dropped out of high school even after the first year. And his parents was devastated about this. Even though that the principal tried to talk to Madison, she still explained that this was just misunderstanding. She was just calling that it was just for fun. She never actually harmed him in any way, which was actually the truth. Because she didn't never actually physically harm him or any other students, but only called them names. Which the student, the boy, could confirm he never been harmed by her, but only been calling so much bad names, which the principal gave her only one warning for each time. But ever since, she always tried to avoid being detected by other staff or like teachers or janitors, which seems to be working so far. And as Allison and Courtney saw this girl Olivia, they decided to walk up to her and welcome her to new school and maybe try to make friends with her so that she knows that there are people, at least kids in the school who want to be her friend. And even though Olivia herself didn't say much, she was too shy, which Allison could have noticed because of this constant bullying in her old school. Even though they actually invited Olivia to spend time with her at the lunch break, which he accepted. Even during the whole time of the first classes, Olivia and Allison and Courtney talked about this particular new girl. They both could sense the vibe that she has been bullied, and that's because she has been so silent most of the time. And during lunch break, in the lunchroom, both actually sitting down and invited over Courtney, Olivia, to sit him down. And they start talking and get to know her better. And even when she revealed why the most target why she was pulling back in her old school, the main reason was in fact when some of the students find out that she was lesbian. That targeted her such bad way. They call her stupid names like she's too ugly, she's too stupid, she would never be finding a perfect girlfriend, or maybe she just drop out of school, drop out the face of earth, and everything like that. And suddenly, Allison could actually notice sense that if there was something like if this happened to her, she would have been the same target. But all that stopped when suddenly the silence they're talking was interrupted by a voice behind her, and that was in fact Madison and her two friends. So, you are a lesbian. So that was the reason why you just dropped out from the old school and came to ours. What was it? You were too stupid, too ugly to find a girlfriend, and that was the reason you became bullied by the other girls? I don't think I'll show it much in that. I mean, you are too ugly. Aren't you that? Told her friends started laughing about it, and Olivia, she started crying. And for the very first time, Allison could be standing. She actually instead looked at Madison with an angry look and said, Madison, this enough. You have been bullying others from this since ever since we started high school. And this is her first day, and you have been targeting her already. Please leave. But Madison didn't move. She was just smirking and grinning and said, Oh, you're defending this girl, are you? And but that means you are also lesbian. And what she didn't know that Allison was in fact a lesbian. But she tried to act she even wasn't that. Listen, even if I didn't want a lesbian, I wouldn't even want to be you targeting anyone like her. She's new here. Would you have been the same if you were a lesbian and if anyone targeted you? Would you have been happy to be like that? For the first time, Madison looked shocked, but soon quickly changed with a smirk of a grin. No, because I would never like girls in the same way. Because boys are even more perfect to be with, in a sense. So even if I was a lesbian, I wouldn't have been telling you that. Or even tell anyone. Oh, so you're not a lesbian then. So why haven't you been dating a boy since you started high school? Or perhaps even back in middle school? That was something that Madison had a point. Allison hasn't even dated any boy, not even back in middle school or when she started high school, despite there were a lot of good looking boys that she may have started dating. Oh, if you're not a lesbian, what about you dating him? And she pointed at a guy by the name Tom, who was also a close friend to Allison. When he heard that, he just stood up and he just turned around. He was red in his face. Yeah, I can actually, to bit, I will actually date Tom because I like him. He's a good friend of mine, and I don't see any why. And then Tom actually walked up to her and asked her out, which she said yes. That's just a surprise though, because even Madison believed that this may just be another trick. But when he actually then asked if Tom would even consider to kiss Allison in front of everyone, a real kiss and not a fake one, because she would notice if there's a fake one. Even despite this would be Allison's very first kiss, but she agreed to do so. So she walked up to Tom and they actually shared a real kiss. And that satisfied Madison for a while. But then she went target back to Olivia, who was crying. Ah, don't cry. You're just too ugly to be with another girl. Just ignore it. Just admit it. And they both she started laughing with her friends and they just walked off. Tom sat down with Allison, Olivia, and Courtney. Allison was talking to Tom, and while Courtney tried to comfort Olivia. After school was over, both Tom and Allison walked together since they lived close by to each other. Then was it telling why this secret came out when she told him about the reason why she said that. And he agreed, because he doesn't even like Madison to be bullying out of the students anymore. But he's afraid to do anything because he didn't talk himself. So that is the reason why he hasn't even standing up to others. But when her family found out she had a boyfriend, they were actually happy to see that she has found someone to be with. Even though when her older brother, only about 2 weeks later, when he found out about her sister, that his sister had been dating a boy despite being a lesbian. She was surprised that he called her. Ben, I haven't thought being with you for in at least a while. Yes, this actually came to my attention from mom, telling me, you having a boyfriend. Yeah, that's true. So, how is it possible you having a boyfriend while you are a lesbian? That is confusing. Can you tell me why something that happened? Because we are both so close, you never tell me this? Why? And then Allison started explaining the details why that happened, and why the reason that she has my boyfriend. Oh, I see. Well, that's a good thing for ladies having your new friend, but this. At least I'm not this upset though. But then Allison asked one question. Do you think do you think mom and dad would be mad if they find out if I was a lesbian? To be honest, I don't know, man, Allison. I have no idea. He said. This is something I probably wouldn't have even asked them directly because if they do, they might start asking you some lot of questions. But if I honestly say, maybe I just don't know. And even though that this was a bit of comforting to Allison about this. Well, I'll talk to you later on there, Allie, which is the nickname for her. Yeah, see you too then, Ben. For the next couple of days after this, when she talked to her brother Ben, she started at least started to feel like maybe it was time to even telling someone else about her as being a lesbian. And that was the only one she could even come up with was in fact Olivia. She found out from Courtney where Olivia lived. It wasn't that far from she lived apparently, only across only about 2 blocks away. So when she walks up to Olivia's home, Olivia's mother was still surprised to see another girl standing by their door when she explained that she goes to the same school as Olivia and that she is a friend of hers. Olivia's mom was actually very surprised that her daughter has a friend. But she walks in because when Olivia saw her, she smiled and thinks that she is a friend of hers, and they actually walked up to Olivia's room where they small started talking when Allison revealed her biggest secret. So you are also a lesbian. Is that why you just saying that you're dating this Tom? Because you don't want your secret to be revealed? Yeah, most part of that, and then I don't want to be bullied by Madison anymore, or at least being targeted by her. And then Allison revealed the truth of another guy and a boy who was targeted by that. That's terrible. And at school, did they do anything? They believe her? To Allison, Olivia said. Pretty much. They actually believed her, then since she didn't actually physical harm him in any way. Wow, that's hard even to believe, said Olivia. Olivia then asked if she wanted to stay over for dinner, which Allison didn't mind. When during dinner, when Allison told her parents that Allison was also a lesbian, and she was expecting that her parents would be shocking, or at least maybe mad or something, but in fact they were actually smiling because they knew that their daughter was apparently lesbian and they support her. And they supported her. And she was just grateful to have this part, to have a friend who's immediately opened about her orientation to be a lesbian. But then things start to change for the last part of this time this week. Apparently, when this when Madison was found out that the school was going to have a prom, and even though Tom had asked Allison to go with as her date as his date, which she said yes. But there was something about this prom though, because only about a few days earlier, Madison found out something that she found very surprising, but most of all shocking, and she planned to reveal this big secret at the prom. But what it was, she didn't even tell her supposed friends about it, because she know that they might have revealed the secret to others in advance. And at the prom, though, both Allison and Courtney had a great time, even though Olivia wasn't even there because she was too embarrassed to even go because she had no date. Even though Allison and Courtney tried to convince her to go with them as a friend, but she didn't want to go. And then, when this prom was happening, Madison actually walked up to the stage and asked if she could have a moment to talk in a microphone because she wanted to have something to tell. So she was allowed to. And first, she said that this prom was a great. She loved it, and she had a lot of fun. Even the other people actually said they had also a great time. But then she said she had something to tell. She had learned a big secret only a few days before the prom had happened. Everyone was looking what kind of secret could it have been? Was something about the school or about some students? But then, as she will look as Bill started telling, she was actually focusing her look at Ellis. The big secret, everyone, is the fact that the supposed been Allison to be Tom's girlfriend is a fake. Apparently, they aren't even dating for real. They are in fact only friends, and the true secret is she's a lesbian, like Olivia. She's laughed, and everyone just turned around and looked at her. And now Allison's big secret was just revealed. Everyone was silent. Some of the girls actually asked Allison if this was the truth, even though she would try to deny it, but it was pointless. Because Madison said, it's not the point of being revealing this though, because we all know you are a lesbian. You cannot deny it anymore, said Madison with a grin. And then she left the stage and walked back to her friends who were standing next to her. Allison. She stood there with Courtney. And everyone started saying, Courtney, are you even dating your best friend? Courtney was shocked. No, she's my best friend. Even if I was a lesbian, I would date her, but she's my best friend. And even despite she is that, you won't treat her different. That is what I say. But before she could finish, Allison started crying, and she actually ran home. She left the prom. Even when she came home, her parents were surprised to see her home so early, since the prom wasn't even supposed to end for another hour. But she didn't tell exactly what happened. But the same evening, Allison received a call from Courtney, tried to comfort her best friend about what happened, but she was too devastated about her secret to even come out. She had even no idea how Madison even found out about this big secret in the first place. But nevertheless, even though she would find out how, she wouldn't even bother anymore. But this was not the thing that would change. Because the next early morning, when Allison went down to eat some breakfast, her parents were sitting by the table, and they were talking when she came down. But when she entered the kitchen, they were silent. This was nothing more, not that much ordinary for it to happen. But when they asked Allison if something happened at the prom, and Even though Allison would try to deny that nothing happened, but because when she came home running, home crying, it was no point of them being denying it. And when they asked her, "Are you a lesbian, Allison? Are you?" It was silent for first. "How did you find out?" "Some of their friends from your school, their moms actually called us, especially me, telling me what happened." "Are you lesbian, Allison?" And Allison had no idea, even though she would try to deny it, but she said, "Yes, Mom, Dad, I'm lesbian, okay? Who else knows about this?" "Courtney, she had known all along. She's my best friend. And Ben." And both her parents just looked at each other and her dad said, "Ben, are you saying your old brother knows about this?" He screamed. "You? My daughter? Well, lesbian? I cannot believe it. This is a disgrace. I thought you were start dating this boy, Tom." But Allison tried to explain that Tom was just a friend. She's dating him to try to reveal the secret that none of her friends, who also is a lesbian, who is. "You have a friend who is a lesbian too? What is going on here?" Tom, but her dad trying to calm her down. "Alice, we love you, but this is so big revealing for us," said her mom. "Are you saying you're kicking me out?" But her mom didn't say anything. She just sat there silent, and her father was looking at her with this rage and crying in his eyes. And "Yeah, yes, we are. Just go to your room, pack what you need, and leave. But no more question about this. Go!" And Allison was just crying. She ran out of her room, packed her backpack with some clothes and even her phone and charger, and just left. She had no idea where to go, except for one place that she may know exactly where to go, except for Courtney. She in fact walked all the way to Olivia's home, and since it was a Saturday morning around 7:30 a.m., she knocks on the door, and supposedly maybe it was hoping that anyone could hear her knock on the door, and it was in fact Olivia. Olivia opened the door, and she was actually surprising this. She was actually just walking up and we heard a knock on the door. "Allison, what are you doing here this early this morning? It's like 7:30. Can I come in? It's a bit early. Can you just go home and come back later?" But then she realized that Allison was crying. "What's wrong? My parents kicked me out." "Why?" she asked. "They found out I was a lesbian." "What? How?" "Madison told everyone at the prom." "My God, Madison, this is going too far," said Olivia. "But come in." Olivia allowed her to come in, and then she sat down in the kitchen when Olivia's mom and dad came down to see what happened. She thought maybe that someone had something else happened. When they were surprised to see that Allison was sitting at the table, and when they heard what happened, they was equally shocked. "Mom, Dad, can Allison stay here? She doesn't have anywhere else to go." "And of course, Olivia. Your friend can always stay here, as long as you want. After all, this is something that everyone should accept." "But not everyone is," said Allison while crying. "Listen, you can stay here as long as you want. You don't have to be paying rent or anything. And in fact, We can take you to school and pick you up at any point when you need. Dad, everyone at the school knows that she is a lesbian by now, and that one of the students in fact have been bullying me and her now, trying that she found out she is a lesbian. Wait, have you been bullied again? By who? Her dad said in an angry tone. A girl by the name Madison. She's calling me ugly, stupid. I would never find any other girl to be with, and I will never be a good thing, and I should drop out of school. Again? Said her mom. This is getting out of hand. We need to talk to the principal about this. No point, said Allison. What do you mean? Even despite what happened about a year earlier, said Allison, that she mentioned about this boy, and both Allison's and Olivia's parents were just shocked. Their eyes were getting big as saucers. This is not acceptable, said Olivia's dad. We should talk to the principal by Monday morning. And even despite this, and we will call the police about this. No, said Olivia. Honey, this is getting too far. Back home, you were bullied by other students, and now this. Do you think if we could just keep moving from one city for one to a different state? I know you want to be staying here, but this is getting too fast, too far from now. And even though Allison agreed to this, maybe then if you can have some restraining order or something against her, or maybe, I don't know. As they were talking about this, Allison's phone was ringing, and she was expecting that her parents maybe apologizing, maybe that she could come home. But it was in fact not even her parents, it was her brother. Ben? Allison, are you okay? Where are you? I'm at Olivia's home. Oh, thank goodness. Mom just called me what happened. And they told me. And I can't believe it. They kick you out because you're a lesbian. This is unreachable. I'm not saying decide to come home. No! Finish the college. I'm staying with Olivia's family for now. Please. I don't want you to drop out of college because, for me, I know you want to be successful in life. Please, said Allison. And Allison's brother agreed. But he promised to be back home for Christmas, and that he would go to Olivia's home. But the next day, both Olivia's mom and dad with Olivia and Allison went back to Allison's old home, even though the parents didn't even want to see her. But they allowed her to go back home to only to pick some of her things that she wanted, like clothes and some other things that she wanted. And when she came back, most of her other things had been thrown away, like her beds and her books and everything. But only things that they allowed to stay behind was some clothes that she could take. This was a sign that her parents didn't want to have anything to do with Allison anymore. Even though that Olivia's mom tried to convince Allison's mom about this was just a bad way. This was not the right way to support her daughter to come out as a lesbian. When she told that her daughter was a lesbian, Allison's mom was not having a word about it. She said, I'm sorry. I understand you support your daughter, but I can't. This is wrong. And I don't want to see her in my house anymore. But then Allison said, what about Ben? Huh? Is he will be welcome back? But her father said, of course not. After he know about you being lesbian, he's no longer our son. And that, we don't want to see either of you anymore. Now, when you have your stuff, get the hell out of my house. Get out. And that made her cry, but she then said, you two should. But then she stopped and said, fine. If I will ever have my own children one day, I will never tell them. I will tell exactly what happened and tell them you will never see them. And that hurt her parents even more, but they said, you will never get married because you're a lesbian. said her dad by standing indoors, screaming at them as they left. Olivia was comforting Allison. Even though the Monday came, Olivia went there with her parents and, including Allison, they went straight to the principal's office. Okay, this is something new. I mean, two students with her parents and. Excuse me, but Allison, what are your parents? Are they supposed to be here as well? No, St. Olivia said. They kicked her out and they have nothing to do with her anymore. They didn't want to even see her anymore. And the principal was shocked. That is just heartbreaking. So, what can I do for you all? We are here to be giving you an ultimatum. Either you punish this girl, Madison, for being bullied by a daughter, and including her friend Allison, or we taking these to school board, or maybe charge the school for suing you all for not having stopping bullying from happening. And they both explained that their daughter had previously been bullied in her old school. The reason why they moved here because she could have a good start. But the principal, and he wanted to have this problem solved. Look, as so far, no students have been harmed by her. By just calling by name. Names, said Olivia said. Listen, names can still hurt, said he angrily. Dad, please, calm down, said Olivia. Allison explained about this boy that recently had been dropped out. She had then been told that Olivia should do the same, and including Allison. No one of the other students won't even talk to her. They're ignoring her. That was shocking. When the principal had only one other option. Listen, if you don't have anything about this done, fixed by this problem to be solved, we had no other options to call in police about harassment by this girl, and maybe it had this solved that way. It is not a threat, just an option, he said, Olivia's dad said. And then the principal pushed a button and said to his secretary to call if they could call in Madison. And as Madison came, the room was empty except that the principal there. Now, Madison, it came to my attention that you have been continued by bullying at different students again. No, I haven't done that, said Madison, trying to lie up her way. No, this time there is no option for you to be doing. You have been bullying two more students by telling them that they should drop out of school as that happened last year. The first time, I give you a warning. But two more students? Now exactly for that this one of the parents to one of the students actually had been telling me this, and that they should me telling you to be expelled from school, and which I gladly would have accepted. Unless if you don't stop doing this. This is your only and last warning. You hear me, Dan Madison? And I will inform your parents about this. Even despite Madison trying to explain that it wasn't even real, that she was just playing around. It was just some goofing down. But the principal had nothing about it to hear about it. Listen, your parents had now been informed. And Madison is shocked. She said, but this was just a joke, she said, trying to explain. No. And then the door knocked, and both her parents walked in, and they weren't even happy. They could, as they all others from the hallways screaming, and it was actually both her parents screaming at her. She would explain and and even apologize to both the students that she had been bullying, and she will be punished severely. Even though that Madison was angry. But since that no other student didn't want to back up her so-called jokes, even her friends abandoned her because they found out that she had been caught or at least been having a severe punishment. because they realized if they would have been found out if she, along with they, had been bullying, they would also be the same problem. Even the principal aware about those two had been doing it, but allowed it to slip on the way. Madison, though, she apologized to both Madison and to Allison and Olivia. She was crying over this now. But her parents decided maybe it was best for her to switch school to another where she can have to have this should she could have a fresh start. And apparently she did. After by the end of the month, she had moved from one school to another, and that was the last time anyone saw Madison. And what happened to her old friends though? Well, they remained to be friends, but they never bothered anyone else. But what happened to Olivia and Allison? Allison's brother came back to town for Christmas, as he promised though. But before then, Allison had actually asked Olivia out on a date, and now other students actually accepted the lesbian and bisexual to be as them, except for Allison's parents. They still refused to have anything had any contact with her or her brother, which they both agreed never to do so. So, rest of the time, the rest of the school year for Allison and Olivia went perfectly. They actually started focus on their school studies and both their grades went up again and they had new friends. Even Courtney, who had been standing there by the side both of them, was actually happy to see that Olivia had been start dating Allison. But there was one time when during Christmas when Ben came over, he was actually happy to see his sister be smiling again that she had found a girlfriend to be with and he agreed. She is a very energetic personality. She's the right one for that Allison could be with. And he even jokingly said, maybe then she will be your wife in the future. Ben, we'd only been dating for about what, a couple of months? But Olivia did smile and said, maybe. Maybe it happens. Allison just blushed and said, yeah, maybe. But then, Allison asked her brother if he had any sort of contact with their parents and lately, but he said no. Even when they tried to email their dad or mom about trying to convince them maybe to pass on from this event, but no answer via mail or email or phone calls, anything. It's like they had suddenly cut off all contact with both of them. So both agreed this was the best option for them both to do. Even though that Allison now lived with Olivia's parents, which they accepted, and they actually accepted her part of the family, and even though that even after they both finished high school, both Olivia and Allison were just talking about which college to go to, as they both was told from their brother, from Ben, that there was a good college in the town where he studied, which both of them actually could go to this college, and he had even a big surprise to her. After he had just finished the college himself at the time, he actually had bought a house, or at least a small house, big enough both for himself and for Allison and Olivia. And here's another thing: the home wasn't even that far from college, and he had offered both of them to stay there for rent of free. Both Allison and Olivia were devastated. They were ecstatic. They were expecting to be this. So they both accepted the offer and they both applied for this college and both were accepted in because they had such good grades. Even though Olivia's mom was sad to see her daughter moving away from them, but they agreed that they would be back in to celebrate holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and some of that. But the same day when they were about to leave, Olivia and Allison went to her Olivia's parents' home to tell them about this big news. Even though that Ben was in fact in the car driving them there. And when they knocked on the door, both of her mom was smiling and she wasn't expecting a visit. When she saw Allison and Olivia standing there, her face dropped. Allison? Alice? But I told you, never come here again, she said with an angry tone. But this time her dad wasn't even home. He was at work. Yes, and this is the. I just want to be here to say this, Mom. Me and Olivia are leaving. We are moving from this town, away from you and Dad, because you never accepted me for who I am. And for that, me and Olivia will now live with the same place as Ben. And she pointed to the car, and Ben sat there and just waved and just smiling. Ben, this is outraged. You are not doing this. Mom, you kicked me out years ago. And I have been staying at Olivia's home, and they accepted me. They welcomed me home in their home with open arms. You kicked me out. What do you expect? You never treated me anything. You didn't even call me for my birthday. You never sent me a Christmas gift. Even Ben tried to contact you and Mom, both you and Dad, by email or phone calls, but you ignored all of this. And this is the way we have to tell you this, though. Allison was very devastated because she had hoped that her parents would have moved on, but even now slowly but accepting that their daughter to be a lesbian. No, I don't want to have seen you anymore, said her mom. And then she said, fine, because even after college, you will never see me or perhaps your future grandchildren ever, she said, and before she left, turned around and said, Mom, you are the most absolute worst parent ever, along with Dad. I had thought maybe you would have at least accepted me for who I am. But I have to say this. Ben is my only family now. If I get rich and I have leaving an inheritance, he will have it. Maybe Olivia if she will be my wife at time. But you, Dad, you will not have a single dime. Because of this, I had even legally changed my last name. And so has Ben. So you will have nothing to honor anymore. I'm legal age, and you cannot say any more about that. And her mom was just staring at her and said, fine, we don't even want to have even your clothes to our home. And that was the final word before she closed the door. Both Olivia and Allison looked at each other and said, well, that one went well. Yeah, better than I hoped for, said Allison. They both started laughing and then just walked back to the car. And they drove to the city where the college were. Even though they both at first at the college, they were expecting to be difficult. But luckily for Ben, who had a friend who was actually doing some private tutoring, he helped them with their exams and even other tests they would have in the future. And that was a great deal, and especially that Allison had her brother there to helping her, supporting it since her parents kicked her out a few years ago. But it was something about her that she still wanted to have a contact with her parents, even if you mentioned this to both Ben and Olivia. But they both said they had moved on from that point now. You can't try to reach out to them or try to reason with them. They would never even want to listen. Even though Olivia has a point, though, even her brother had a point. So both Olivia and Allison moved on. After they finished high school, both finished college, they stayed at their band's place for the time being later on until both had found their own place in town. But even though Ben said they always welcome back if they didn't have the payment for their apartment anymore, and they agreed to that. But despite this, both of their lives were getting better, until one single day after they had just been on their Valentine dinner at the restaurant. They were about to leave the restaurant, and then when a man popped out from the alley, demanded their wallets any values they had. Even though Olivia tried to explain that they didn't have any much value on them, they had paid by card. But the robber didn't even listen. He still said, "Give me your money! Give me your money! Give me all your values you have!" But even though Olivia tried to handing over her wallet and even some other values she had, even though even Allison was forced to do the same. "Give me more! I want more! That's all we have!" said Olivia, crying and screaming. "I don't believe you! Give me the rings!" And they actually were wearing gold rings to celebrate their engagement. They actually got engaged only about a week earlier this Valentine. But Allison refused. "If you don't give me the rings, I will shoot you and your little girlfriend here." But Allison still refused. But as he tried to move on to try to walk up to them and try to remove them, she pushed him backwards and said, "Get your hands off of her!" And then it's a bang, and the guy took off. The bang was, in fact, he fired his gun. At first, both Olivia thought maybe he's missed them, but he didn't. The bullet hit Allison in her chest. At first, she was shocked about this happened. She was crying, she was screaming, but there was no one else around. The only thing that she saw when Allison fell to the ground, unconscious. She called for help. She called first for 911, after an ambulance. After that, she called him up and called Ben, calling him what happened. Ben was at his home by some friends, but he's watching some TV. When suddenly his call said, "Oh, hey, Olivia. I thought you were in Allison was in your engagement celebration." "Wait, what? Wait, what are you saying? She been shot? Wait, what? Okay, hold on. Are you serious?" And Olivia was crying once she tried to explain what happened. "Okay, calm down. Have you called for an ambulance?" And she said she had. "Good. Okay, wait for them. I will call. I will wait. Call me when you reach the hospital so I know exactly where you are and I will get there. As soon as I can. I promise." And they both hang up. They were actually so devastated about this happening. At the hospital, it turned out the guy hadn't even fired just once, but twice. And the seriously injured that she was, as Olivia and Allison arrived to the hospital, she saw her Allison was taken to the surgery right away because the injuries was so severe because she died once in the ambulance. Olivia, she was devastated, sitting waiting in the waiting room for her fiance to be okay when Allison's older brother Ben just rushed in and saw her, blood on her clothes. "Olivia, where is she?" she but Olivia couldn't say it in words. She just cried and cried. She was devastated. She had no words to even bring out, even though Ben tried to talk to her. When the doctor suddenly walks out, "Are you related to the Miss Allison?" "Yes, that's my younger sister, and this is her fiance. Is she okay?" "I had started telling you this, but she is stable for now. But the bullets severed she lost a lot of blood." "Is she?" "No, she is not dead, but she is stable but in a critical condition for now, for next 12 hours. I know this might sound horrible, but is there any other relatives that they can contact for if this is at the moment?" "No, we cut our contacts for my parents for years ago. They even were trying to even pick up their call. Maybe they did this time than they should." And even though Ben tried to call her parents, but they will both stalled even Oh, they even picked up the line. When he left, then he realized there was no point to be calling them. For the next several hours, both the band and Olivia was walking back and forwards in the waiting room for having updates about Allison's condition. Both wanted to see her, but the doctor said the best were to leave them to be her to rest since she was in such critical condition, and he suggested they go home. Olivia didn't want to go back to the apartment alone, so she went back with Ben to his place. And by the next morning, Ben got a home phone call from the hospital. And when he saw it was the hospital's number, he had a hope. He was terrified that it was going to be the bad news. But apparently, Olivia was there when she heard the call from the hospital. She believed that she started crying and said, "She's gone, she's gone." But it wasn't. It was opposite. Allison had pulled through. She was now in more stable condition, had been moved from the ICU, and they were allowed to see her later afternoon. Both Olivia and Ben could not be more happier. Even despite Ben tried one more time to call their parents to tell them what had happened, but nothing. Even despite later that afternoon, late early noon, when the police arrived to Ben's home, they were happy not there to be talking to Olivia to get more details about this guy so they maybe can find him who done it. Because they they actually arrived at the hospital the last night, trying to talk to her for more details. But as she was so devastated, she was crying, she couldn't even give them a single words to them. So Ben suggested that maybe they get to his place by the next day. Maybe then, when she has calmed down enough, we will to tell them what happened. Even though the police said, "Oh great, okay," but now she had calmed down enough, and she gave them this perfect description of this guy, who had done it to be harming her fiance. Despite that, they managed to find the guy, and apparently he was an addict, a drug addict, who had some money so he can pay to buy more drugs. They found him in the park, passed out on a bench, along with the things that he stole from them. Some of the items were turned back to Olivia, and they told them that this guy would never be bothering anyone, or especially them anymore. That same afternoon, Olivia was taken to the hospital by Ben, and both were happy to see that Allison was okay. But she was still unconscious. They even asked the doctor when they would expect her to wake up. But as the doctor said, it is hard to tell. It can be a day, maybe tomorrow, but we are keep monitoring her condition as they are. It was close. If the bullet had moved, had been much closer to her heart, it would not been. She would have not made it. Hearing that made Olivia cry, but she was at least happy that Allison was okay. Even though that Allison herself was unconscious, Olivia, she had no idea what was happening. She barely ate, she barely slept for the next couple of days. They had received no update from the hospital except that she was still unconscious, but on the Friday, almost 4 days later, they received a call from the hospital. Allison had woken up, and she was asking for her fiance, Olivia. So both Ben and Olivia drove as fast as they could back to the hospital, and both started crying when they saw her. She was in fact awake, even though that she was in a very weak state. But at least they were happy to see that she was okay. Olivia wanted to hug her, but even the doctor and the nurse said, "Please, she is just gone through such that have been going through such severe surgery, so please don't hug her too far, too hard. And even though Olivia listened, but she didn't, and she said that she was so happy that she had almost believed that she had lost her own fiance. If that had happened, she wouldn't have believed it. Even though when all that same evening, Olivia had called her parents about the same night when it happened, both her parents was terribly shocked. They couldn't even believe that their daughter's fiance had been shot twice on a trial from this drug addict. They offered to come over down there to spend time with each other trying to comfort her, but Ben talked to her mom, said it is fine. He can be there for their daughter, to comfort her, which they both agreed. And but they still said they will come down there to see them, no matter what happens. If any moment they will drop anything and just go there to be with the daughter, no matter what happened. Despite that, Olivia now probably had to see her fiance to still be in the hospital for the next couple of days, maybe for a whole week more, just because for safety reason. Even though when Allison was allowed to leave the hospital, she was really happy to stay at Ben's place for the next couple of days, so maybe for a week for resting. But then Ben had tried to reach out to the parents once again, but this time they had learned, at least from a friend who still lives back home, their hometown, that their parents had divorced and their father had moved away and their mother lives alone. And when she picked up Ben's call, he wasn't even expecting that she would even answer, because since he had tried at least several times, she said, Ben, what do you want? You know that I don't want to talk to either you or Allison again. What? Are you serious? She was what? Oh my god. It, is she okay? Her mom was terrified about hearing her daughter has been shot, nearly killed. Is she? Thank goodness for that she's okay. Can I talk to her, please, Ben? Able to Ben did first know that maybe that her sister perhaps didn't want to listen, but he said he would try. When he told her that if mom was on the phone and that she wanted to talk to her. At first, Allison didn't want to have nothing to do with her mom at all after what happened. After that, they cut out of her life in the early years earlier. But when he explained that he had told her what happened to her, and that she was terrified because he can actually hear that she was genuine terrified about the daughter. And of course, Allison agreed. So he put on the speaker and, Allison, are you okay? Yes, I'm okay, Mom. And what do you care? You come to kick me out years ago. But, honey, please, I know that it was a terrible mistake. Please, give me a chance to be working this out again, please. What about Dad? Will he accept this? And then she told him, oh, well, I'm staying at Ben's place for now. If you want to come here, he will send you the address where he lives. And then she hung up the phone. Ben did text their mom the address, and next couple of days she actually came there to see them. Despite that, even though the Allison didn't want to see her mom ever again, because of what she did. But she could in fact see that the mom was genuine, honest, that she made a terrible mistake, that she kicked her out. In fact, what she did, what she revealed to both Ben and Allison, she had in fact kept a box with some old pictures because their father had removed all the family photos of them together as a family and tried to burn them. But she had saved at least a number of old pictures and even some old childhood toys and some other things in a box in the basement, which only she knew about. And after that, they had divorced from their dad. She decided maybe that she was made a terrible mistake by kicking out her own only daughter. And now when she finds out by calling from her old son that her own daughter had been shot twice and nearly died because of a drug addict, she could not even believe what she had been doing because she was so close to losing her only daughter and she couldn't even believe it. So she reached out to Ben once again though, and from that moment she wanted to spend a lot of time with her daughter as much as they had even seen each other for so much long time. Even though then Allison was at first not even convinced that all this was maybe as a trick, so that she can forgive him, but she was actually honest. They even tried to reach out to Dad after Ben somehow managed to track him down, but he had any nothing to do with them. Even despite Ben had told him that his only daughter was nearly being killed by a drug addict, but he still had nothing to do with her anymore. To him, he said, I have no son. I have no daughter. So please don't call me ever again. He screamed and phone and hung up. And that was the final time both Allison or Ben ever heard from the dad ever again, though. But what about the relationship between Allison and her mom? It was so slowly in the process at first because even though despite that she knew that her daughter was engaged with Olivia, but after she kept to know Olivia better personally, she actually started slowly opening up and even accepting that Olivia was now engaged with her daughter and that they actually had even planned to get married sometimes in the summer. And then Olivia had asked if she could maybe help her to arrange the wedding. And since that was something that she had always wanted to do when their daughter was still young. And even though even though from that, Allison and their mom have worked out their differences and have repaired their damaged relationship and have restarted their friendship once again. And it seems to be working much more because she was even happy that Olivia had asked her mom to be the one to help arrange for the wedding. Including, of course, even Olivia's own mom was also helping, which drove both Olivia's mom and Alice's mom closer to be best friends. But even at that point, Allison's mom decided to move. She actually moved to the same town in which their daughter was now living, and at some point just before the wedding, she actually started dating and found this great guy. He was actually having a daughter who was a bisexual himself, and he was actually open and accepting about it. And when he found out that his new girlfriend had a daughter was now engaged or was a lesbian, she accepted it and even heard about the past event that happened. She accepted that she had romanced her bad decisions in the past, that she had now working better to rebuild her relationship with her own daughter again, and including her son. And even at the wedding, even just maybe 1 or 2 days before the wedding was supposed to be taking place, Ben and and his mom has once again tried to reach out to their to their dad to invite him to the wedding, but he had somehow changed his phone number, and he actually, even when they sent an email and he responded with only few words: "Leave me alone. I have no daughter or son. Period." So that was the final time they ever tried to reach out to him. And despite this, when Allison saw Olivia walking up in the aisle at the wedding, she felt so happy. Even when her brother was standing there as supposed best man, he said, "You're a lucky girl, you know that. She is the most beautiful that I ever seen. Yeah, you also in your own girlfriend, well, fiance, if you said. Wait, you're engaged now? Yeah, that's good. I proposed to her last week. You know what happens. I'm proud for you, bro. Thank you, sis." And then the wedding itself was the most beautiful. But both of them actually had something to tell. Olivia said, "Allison, I cannot even be more happier to be when I first met you at the school, in high school all those years ago. If you had even stepped out from me, I would have probably had dropped out from school and never have been meeting you and never experienced this true love from someone who I really care about. And for this is something I really want to be with. You are the one who really opened my eyes even more to realize there are more in life than just being bullied. Even if it took me not to being transferred to that school to find the true love of my life. And for that, I'm very grateful. Not only to be that, but also to have met my awesome brother-in-law." She smiled and looked at Ben, and he smiled back and nodded. And then when it was Allison's turn, she said, "Olivia, there is no words to describe how much I love you, how much my love for you are. It goes beyond anything. My love for you are so strong. Ever since first saw you the first day, I was amazed to see a new face in school. And when I heard you were lesbian, I was trying. I cannot stand to see that particular bullying girl, Madison, to try to harm you or hurt you in any way. So I stood there to defend you. If I hadn't, I would never been standing here right now with you to be married with the one that I love the most of all. And for that, I'm very grateful. And not only for that, and even for that, even for with your help, and so for my brothers, that you two helped me to realize to rebuild my relationship with my own mother again. It is I am for that ever grateful for you both of you." And after they had said their things, the ceremony proceeded. And then the priest said, "Now you may kiss the bride." And even afterwards, when they had this small party at Ben's house, it was a great moment. Despite that they had both of them gone through for the past few years and since high school and then since they moved to this new town, both families could actually see how happy their daughters were to see them dancing for the first time. Because as they were dancing and looking deep in each other's eyes, it was just like they were the only ones there. The whole world was just surrounding them and stood still. Like the music was still playing in the background and it's just they were only ones there. For both of them realized this was something that they really want to be with. Allison could not have been happier to be with Olivia. And this Olivia is the only one who was the most amazing girl to be with. Despite what she happened to Olivia in the past, she was grateful to have found someone to be a great friend, but later to be her girlfriend and later to be her wife. Even though after the party itself was over and most of the guests has gone home, Both Olivia's parents and and Allison's mom had something special planned for them. They had arranged for them to go to Hawaii for for a week for a honeymoon. Both Allison and Olivia shockingly to surprise this big news. They actually hugged their parents for this amazing surprise. But there was something else. They turned later to find out that was actually Ben who suggested Hawaii, and also he had a friend who actually owns a beach house on Hawaii, and he had actually somehow talked to his friend, so allowing that his sister and her wife could spend the honeymoon there for a whole week, which his friend actually accepted and was happy to allow that happen, because having a honeymoon on a special place is something a good start in a new relationship. And when Allison and Olivia came to Hawaii and saw this beach house next to the beach, it was a magical place. They both said, I wish that this honeymoon can last forever though. Yeah, but this ended it only for a week, Olivia said with a smile. Yeah, let's do this time. Let us spend the time here as best as we can. Sure do, said Olivia, and both was actually very happy to be on the honeymoon. They did everything: swimming around the ocean, having romantic dinners, and going sightseeing around the islands, and just having a great time. And for that, they could not have been happier to be in there for from the support from both their families and some of their close friends though. Even after all this. Even in Allison's mind, she wished this wasn't even a dream. And that next morning that she wakes up in her old room back and she was still in high school. But it didn't happen. It wasn't even a dream. In her mind, this was the most perfect ending and a start in a new life with someone like Olivia. And even when they came back to their home, though, back to them after about the weekend on honeymoon, they once again thanked Ben for suggesting this place, and they even sent a personal email to his friend and thanked him for allowing him to stay at his beach house for the weekend, or for this week. Even after about a few years being married, Allison and Olivia, they had been talking about starting a family. And of course, they decided to really try to figure out about an adoption. And they was actually interviewed by the staff from the agency, and they were approved, and they adopted two daughters who were sisters, who was both 5 and 7. And the daughters was the most adorable daughters they could ever ask for. And especially though for Allison's mom, who was very happy to be a grandmother for once. She spent so much time with their new adopted granddaughters. She wanted to make time for her daughters past, and even despite this, even she knew that even if her granddaughters maybe one day to end up to be either bisexual or straight or even less even to be a lesbian, she would support them both, no matter what. She didn't want to make the same mistake once again, which she agreed with her daughter. Even after all this happened, Olivia, in her mind, this was the most perfect opportunity for them both. But there was something else though, because only about 2 years after they had adopted their two daughters, they wanted to try to have another baby, but this time by artificially by go to by a donor, which happened. And Olivia, she had a baby girl And only about 3 years later, Allison, she had a baby son. So that was about the most perfect life for both of them. Not only to be married with the one they loved the most, but even to have 4 children. Even though, despite what they had been going through for the past many years, back in high school, when they were bullying, and when that Allison almost lost her life to this stupid drug addict who wanted some money so that he can get another high. But both was actually happy that she made it, and now they're happily married and having a big family to one the one with the one they love the most of all. Even despite all the downfalls in the past, they always pulled it through and made it work. And for Allison and Olivia, they both could not have been more happier to be with the one they loved the most of all, and especially what they have been going through. And especially for especially Olivia, for the time when she was in when her old school years ago, she was so close to maybe giving up hope to find her true love. And even if her parents had even moved to a new state, to the same school where Allison was work going, she would never have found or even met her future wife, and she would have missed out so much joy. And especially for Allison, if she never had encountered Olivia at school, she never would have met her future wife, and even she probably still would have been targeted by Madison's stupid jokes that she claimed it to be the back then, and her parents maybe had kids still that kicked around, and she probably has still lived with Courtney as a best friend. Even though that after all these years, Allison had to still had much as good contact with Courtney. She had in fact been chosen to be their children's godmother, which she accepted. And in fact, Courtney actually moved to the same town and went to the same college, and they were actually spent so much time. But when she heard what happened to Allison when she was shot, she was devastated. But she was just happy and grateful that her friend pulled through. And she was really happy to see her best friend getting married with the girl she loved the most. And this is how Olivia and Allison found a true love, got a big family together. The end.